Have you ever had clients that you have either begun your coaching relationship with them, or it's been going on for a period of time, and you have been prescribing to them, maybe a certain meal plan or advice around what kind of food choices to make, maybe even encouraging them to have certain sleep habits, drinking water, exercise, etc. And often do you find that upon these conversations that you hear just a lot of excuses, a lot of justifications about why they didn't apply themselves to the advice that you have given them? Now, I get it. Like, this is something that happens to us all. We're only human. We're all going to steer a little bit off track every now and then. But in terms of a coaching relationship, and you are ideally trying to get a client from one set behavior or way of living to another, you are going to come across tons and tons and tons of resistance from the client because of the emotional attachments that they have of the emotional habits that they have to the habits and behaviors that they have created in the first place. And so it's very, very often not that easy to change habits and behaviors. And when we do want to change our habits and behaviors to a whole different way of existing, it takes a long, long time to move from the conscious, so that feeding instructions and suggestions and advice and things like that, for it to sink down into that unconscious level. And this will become familiar if you've ever been down that personal development track, where you've got to read a lot, you've got to hear a lot, you've got to surround yourself with lots of positive or influences that are going to direct you towards what it is that you want, or the way of living that you want. And so all of that is trying to filter through that consciousness all the way through to that unconscious. And unless you are able to clear away a lot of those unconscious programs, that process is going to be fairly long and arduous for the client or for the individual. Now, what I want to highlight here, or bring into your awareness, is that by utilizing advanced conversational hypnosis and natural organic conversation, you're going to be able to work with your client or the individual that you are chatting with, and imparting some of your wisdom and experience. You're going to be able to work with them very, very intentionally to break through some of that resistance that shows up in every conversation. Every conversation is a conscious conversation and an unconscious conversation. And so when you become aware of some of the information that the client or the individual is feeding you, come to the awareness that majority of that conversation is conscious. And when I say conscious, it is all just an interpretation, an assumption, a conclusion of all of our life experiences. But the unconscious information is the stuff that's really attached to them, the emotional attachments that are attached to the client, or the client has attached themselves to. And we can begin to interpret that information by the way they express themselves. They express themselves verbally or physically. And when you are able to apply the skills that you would learn in advanced conversational hypnosis to follow those cues or those unconscious moments that show up, you're going to lead yourself and the client into a space of trance, which effectively is what is commonly known and naturally known as hypnosis. But instead of swinging a pendulum or applying deepness and all sorts of inductions and techniques to get your client into that space of trance, all for the effort not to even be able to resolve what is actually there, we're going to do it organically through conversation by, as I mentioned before, deciphering what is conscious information and what is unconscious information. And when we follow that track of those unconscious cues and unconscious moments that show up, the client is going to guide themselves very, very naturally and organically into that space of trance. Now, that space of trance is where the unconscious mind is effectively like open. And when it is then open for suggestion. And by utilizing the information that the client has given you, by using their direct language and their directness back to them, reflecting it back to them, they are going to then be able to reposition themselves to change what they effectively change what they see or perceive and feel in this experience that they're experiencing right now. And when we proceed and utilize and grow those unconscious moments and allow the trance and we shape the trance for the client with utilizing the resources and things that they come up with, then they're then going to be able to come out of trance back into that conscious way of thinking, and the change that they are wanting to change is going to become a lot more intrinsic, natural. There's going to be a ton less effort needed. Not going to need to have all kinds of discipline or accountability around creating the changes, because it's going to become a natural motivation that's going to drive them towards creating that change, because we have removed that resistance of emotional attachments, conclusions, assumptions, etc., that have shown up within that conversation.